Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Hey folks, welcome to Making Data Simple. Thanks for listening. We appreciate all the listeners out there. Today I have with me Michael Cohen. He is the Global Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Plus Company, which is around customer-centric, privacy-protecting marketing AI. I understand what all those words are individually. He's going to help me understand what they mean all put together. But a little bit more on Michael. He is an ML and AI product and market expert in consumer data technologies. He has built, marketed, sold, acquired, integrated, comprehensive, explainable machine intelligence products for marketing. This has been done in a wide range of marketing and media management, including marketing optimization, experimentation optimization, user privacy and legal compliance. I could go on and on. Michael, thank you for being on the show. I greatly appreciate it. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Start off, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your experience is, and what brings you to today.
Yeah, we'll start with today. Today, as you said, I'm the Global Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Plus Company. Plus Company is a global network of full service agencies and marketing. We have what we call a full funnel creative sort of offering, social media to digital transformation and more traditional media and creative services. So where do I sit in that world? And what am I responsible for? I'm responsible for Plus Intelligence, right? So when I think about data, I think about what we can do with it. And ultimately that's intelligence that the data and the technology we wrap around it provides. So that's what I'm here to do at a high level. How did I get here? Well, I spent over the last decade building a number of SaaS products that really use data to help marketers improve their decision making using measurement from data and the application to build decision support systems to help make decisions about how to allocate their investments in marketing drivers and what they should put into those investments. Before that, I was actually in academia. I was a full-time faculty member, professor at NYU Stern School of Business, and I was doing research and writing academic papers in the realm of applications of AI and prediction for marketing management. And that's where I started my career. But I felt that I could do more, have a bigger impact if I started building products that were scalable and that marketers could use.
I seem to be asking this a lot of guests. What's your brand then? Is it professor, like teacher? Is it marketer? Or is it data analyst, engineer? What do you consider yourself most if I got to push you over the side of the fence?
I tell people I'm like a marketer, and that's really when I think about problems and how to solve them, that's where I start. Along the way, I learned a bunch of math and computer science and economics and stuff like that, but I knew I needed to learn the hard stuff if I was going to be a good marketer.
I don't know that you can do marketing without it today, can you? Math, the hard stuff.
No, yeah, I mean,
science.
certainly financial literacy, I think, is important for any modern marketing leader.
So tell me a little bit about the Plus Company. This is an entrepreneurial network of agencies, right? It's like Citizens Relations Mechanism, We Are Social, several others. How does that come to be, and how does that play out in terms of your current role?
It comes to be through the formation of that comes about from looking for greater efficiency and economic synergy through combining different parts, and that's just both in terms of the economy of scale of bringing together a bunch of companies as well as scope, and that the sort of scope expansion is really this full funnel idea. You mentioned PR agencies, you mentioned full service media agencies, digital transformation, social, all of these things that a marketer is trying to do in building an optimal communication journey with their audience, with their customers. And there's benefits of integrating that. And that was really the impetus for creating this network of diverse agencies on a global scale, and helping them be the best that they are in their domains, but continuing to integrate the offering into a more full funnel thing, so is distinct from holding company roll up sort of strategy.
But do they still operate independently?
Yes,
independently?
very much so. They're led by separate CEOs, and they manage their own budgets
And then
and get
you come in
prospects.
and help them or guide them around some of the technology integration with marketing.
Yeah,
That's
so when
probably
it comes to technology, I mean, it's most beneficial at scale. You can get better innovation, you can get better scale economics, you can make better products as a result of that, sort of combined wisdom. So the product here is one that serves the whole network, and that's what we provide them to help integrate, right? Like if you want to create a brand message, it better be connected to the ultimate performance objectives that are happening down the funnel. And with more comprehensive data and predictive solutions, you can do that. And that's my role, to have sort of the centralization or the integration through technology and data to help them in their
And
business.
you provide them solutions holistically, or are you addressing pain points one-on-one, or a little bit of both?
I'm definitely more of a holistic system sort of thinker. I think that's pretty critical in this age of leaders asking, well, what is AI, or what is data, and what is it going to do for me? And I want people to see the system possibility, that we're not trying to do a bunch of point solutions here. And I'll give an example of what that means. A friend of mine, Avi Goldfarb at the University of Toronto, he's written with some colleagues a couple books on prediction now, and he shares as one of the examples about system sort of change in general, as black cabs in London, right? And the process
Mm-hmm.
of becoming a black cab driver for the longest time was almost like a 3-year apprenticeship before you actually got out there and could be an independent cab driver, where you had to like learn the roads in a classroom, and then go on ride along, and then be on a probationary sort of period. And then comes along this thing, GPS, that is becoming cheaper and integrated into our mobile technologies, and suddenly you have mapping technology.
Mm-hmm.
And you can either ask yourself, well, do I take these professional drivers and make them cheaper, or do we create some systematically different technology that makes everybody a professional driver? I think you know where I'm going here, but we went that later route. I mean, the economy did, and entrepreneurs did, when they came up with rideshare sort of apps, right? So
Right.
anybody could be a professional driver in London with a GPS, and that's system level change versus just point sort of solutions. So driving our innovation roadmap is very much about how do we, as humans, and having a human centric AI sort of view, reorganize around the possibilities of data and technology.
So I want to go into what you're offering at Plus Company, but I think the best way to start, at least for me, is to expand upon what you just said there. What are traditional approaches to marketing that have become outdated and that fail to capture the increasing complexity of the customer journey today that you're tackling in your role with Plus Company?
Yeah, that's a big question unwrap. I mean, you can go all the way
Of course.
back to the beginning of promotion to really identify this stuff, and everybody always pulls out the classic Wanamaker quote about I know half my marketing's working, I'm just not sure which half, for advertisement. And it's been a journey in figuring that out. At the same time as the way that we're able to reach and communicate with customers and the things that we think are important about those, even on a generational level, evolves. So it was easy when it was just TV and newsprint, and Mad Men were coming up with the next great idea, to a place where shareholders and boards and CEOs are expecting marketers to have more accountability because the availability of data. They want more visibility into this complex ecosystem of advertising technologies, the monopolists that control data and that are selling them technology, that are selling them advertising, and how is all of this helping the bottom line? And that's come on really strong in the last 10 years. But things have developed in terms of the different technologies that we're using to reach people, whether that's social media platforms or different types of digital advertising, transformation in TV becoming more digital and connected. And but these things are very fragmented, right? So what's a marketer to do? They know they need to reach their customers in all these different places, But the data for that exists in all those different places, and it needs to be integrated and harmonized. Historically, people went with a much more top-down sort of view, like what's the basic information about what are the different media channels I'm invested in, for example, and how does that affect sales on a seasonal and cyclical basis. Underlying that is really the story, is you indicated, about the customer's journey. I mean, I think about that as the fundamental building block of the marketplace, how audiences and consumers, or potential consumers in general, are moving through the marketplace, how marketers are communicating with them, and how they're consuming media, how they're responding to it, how they're consuming and responding to other types of marketing signals, all the way through to pricing, and how that affects their decision all along the way and on a continuous basis. So if I'm interested in really reporting back to the CEO about how division is doing, I would expect that she or he would expect the same sort of report that they got from the supply chain group or revenue and finance, that was actually connected to, well, what's the investment that we're making and what's the return on that, and reporting that back in a coherent, plausible, sort of way, which we've made attempts at that, but I think the credibility has been an issue, some sort of overstatement of the return on investment in the marketing domain. You'd think every conversion that happens through the company happened because of some marketing or media investment. It's just not
Marketing
true.
will say it does.
Right, they'll say it, but I mean, like, as marketers, as consumers, they're like, yeah, I pay attention to like 1/100% of what I actually see out there, and by the way, I'm buying this because I need it for my home, not because I saw some ad for it, right? It's like just the baseline demand for any sort of product or service is the major determinant of whether somebody buys it or not, although the marketing helps and it's critical to the success of a business.
Mm-hmm. So what's the solution here then? As I was doing my research on Plus Company, it talked a lot about, and I don't even think I'm pronouncing this right, so you can correct me on it, but it's AIOS, which is an intelligent all-in-one system for marketing. It's predictive intelligence, which I'd like your your definition on, if you will. But it talked about defining the outcome, such as a purchase, and then reverse engineering that customer shopping journey from the initial ad to online reviews, et cetera. But is that the secret sauce, or is that only one element of what you're doing here? Or is that kind of the nervous system of how you're solving some of these problems?
Yeah, you definitely put your finger on the big idea. I think there's another way to explain it that might be useful for your audience and those that are familiar with the general idea of generative AI that we've been hearing about. And most generative AI that people are talking about are things like language or image or sound generation, right? But fundamentally, predictive intelligence or AI, the sort of AIs we're working with today, are sophisticated forms of statistical prediction with some sort of judgment framework wrapped around them. So, the large language models just predict what the next word will be, given the sequence of words that came before. So they're tailored to be really good at that thing, right? It's a pretty general thing. It's really generally useful, but it's an AI that's focused on being a specific thing.
Yep.
And you have a question?
No. I said, yeah. It's computer science at the end of the day. It's this statistical word prediction, which almost, when you put it in a story context, people start getting scared or weirded out because it almost looks like it's thinking. But at the end of the day, it's just computer science.
Right. Well, yeah, the combination of computer science, statistics, and then that human judgment framework that's wrapped around it, which is really important to how this all evolves. And just to get back to AIOS a little bit, the ability to predict something that we don't have from something we have is really what generative AI is about. So what is it that I don't have as a marketer? I have lots of data. It's fragmented. It's in different forms. It comes in at different rates. And all that data is very informative about what I want that I don't have, which is the very detailed customer journey that I'm looking to optimize. So there's a form of generative AI called data augmentation, and data augmentation, allows you to predict something that you don't have. Like, say, you may be familiar with the idea that a company like Facebook doesn't share its customer level data, right? They're described as walled gardens, right? This is a competitive advantage sort of data for them. But they share data about what they're delivering overall in terms of impressions, and you have a sense for who's in the marketplace, and you know what happened in your accounting ledger in terms of who purchased what, or that product or service was purchased. And when you start to bring those pieces together, you begin to see you can solve a puzzle that allows you to predict with a fairly high degree of precision what sort of media or marketing or communication touch point a particular individual had. So you don't have that particular touch point, but you can use prediction to recover it to a level that provides much more representative visibility than a marketer ever had before. And it follows the same idea. You're just using powerful prediction that the cost of it and the speed of it's becoming cheaper to predict things that you want from the things that you and don't have from the things that you do have. So once I know or have a sense that somebody's been exposed to something and I know what they did, now I'm ready to measure it. So the reason why it's called data augmentation is because it sits between the prediction that you're interested in, which is how my media or communication investment affected the actual outcome that drives the stock price, and that I had to predict that impression in and of itself because I didn't have it, because Facebook kept it to themselves, for example. Or, for a given individual, like we have privacy protections. We might not want companies to have detailed information about exposure. And so there's cookie protection and all this sort of thing. But prediction can overcome this and can do it in privacy preserving ways. That's what AIOS is doing fundamentally. It's using a type of generative AI called data augmentation to recover the customer's journey in a representative way to get marketers the data that they need to make the decisions, and then measure the impact of those things, to report those back, as I said earlier, to the CEO and finance in metrics that have face validity.
Makes sense. So we're talking data. Let me say this back to you just a bit. Data augmentation, whereas GPTs are designed for language prediction, which I often say there's a lot of things that can be languages. What you're doing is using predictive intelligence to be able to predict like consumer touch points, behavioral patterns, etc. How does that really come to be? I guess, let me explain. I mean, here's my question. Like, if I'm using a generative AI solution, you usually got to prompt it. You got to prompt it for something. You got to throw it in there, ask it a question. The more specifics and the better you are at prompting, the better answers you're going to get. Is it essentially the same manner or the same workflow around data augmentation?
Well, let's take a step back, right? Before there was a system that you could prompt, somebody needed to build that, right? The prediction technology that did this thing where it predicted words from prompts or images from prompts. And sure, every sort of input-output machine works like that. So in that sense, yeah, AIOS and data augmentation is a prediction output machine. But it's the way that, say, GPTs were constructed and improved is twofold. One, they took prediction technologies that were just really good at predicting things, right? Like neural networks. And then they put a transformer, which is a very structured sort of supervision over the prediction that, allows you to predict words in particular. Well, the same sort of idea is happening with data augmentation. You have mathematical algorithms, for lack of a better term, that are doing prediction, but there's also a structure around those that says, hey, for this particular exercise that I want you to do, which is predict exposure to marketing across individuals and how people respond to it, sort of a three-legged chair, this is the structure you need to put around it, the same way that pre-trained transformers put structure around neural networks to predict words. And then finally, the way that any of these forms of intelligence that use prediction combined with structured human judgment evolve is that is that you give them examples and then you see how they respond, and then you put more structure on it, right? The way that ChatGPT came to be is that they started using predictions that humans saw, and they're like, oh, that doesn't look right to me. Let me give that feedback to the AI, and then that places more structure on the predictor. And so they evolve in a similar sort of way, that you need prediction, you need a system to constrain human judgment on that. It's like systematized and mathematical, and then you need a process to improve it over time. So in that way, it's the same sort of thing. Then you get to the prompting, which is like, okay, now I have this very powerful machine. What do I want it to do? Well, I want it to understand these different types of communication touch points for audiences in Germany. And I'm focused on a couple of different KPIs as a marketer, like brand awareness, website visitation, and product sale. And that's the sort of configuration or the prompting that, a full funnel communication measurement system would require to get its initial setup.
And is it pronounced AIOS?
AIOS.
AIOS, that's what I thought.
Right.
But is it the Chat GPT of marketing then? Is that how you would describe it?
I come closer to describing it as like an investment software, like the way that you go to your Fidelity investments and you look at all the different things that you have invested in, and then there's some intel around those investments and some extra metrics, and then you make decisions, right? And then you activate those decisions. So in marketing, that means, well, where do I spread my dollars and my activities, and then what sort of communication tactics, creative and message do I put into that inventory? That's how I think about AIOS. Again, I tell you, I always start with the marketer's perspective here, but fundamentally, that's as a platform, as an all-in-one system for marketing, and what its potential is, maybe even beyond marketing, is to optimize this communication journey for customers. But it could be anyway. It could be employee experience. That's how I think about it. I don't know.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I'll ask another silly question, because that's what I do here. Is it based off a foundational model?
Well, to me, a foundational model means that I'm interested in understanding the underlying process that generates the data. Other foundational approaches just say, well, I want something that's really good at predicting some sort of outcome, right? So people that work in data science and algorithm engineering are familiar with general frameworks like support vector machines or regression or neural networks, any of these things. And this comes at it a little bit from a different angle, which is more of like, I'd say, a social science or business science sort of angle, which is what's the underlying phenomena that I believe generates the data, and that's how I'm going to write down the algorithm or the predictive framework. And then I'll use like standard notions of probability around that. Like the example that I give is that I want to maximize the probability of some model I have given the data that's available about it, which is, maximum likelihood or Bayesian posterior maximization. But the important part there is like within the idea that I want to predict something about a phenomena that I believe in, which is the structure. And when I'm talking about the phenomena, I mean this journey the consumer takes and how they respond to that journey. That's the fundamental model that I write down. It has a general form. It's positioned in a long history of econometrics sort of literature, and it utilizes modern constructs in prediction. The computer science part, like how do I maximize this thing? Well, TensorFlow will help me do that, but I have to tell it fundamentally what it is that I want to maximize, and it's maximizing the probability that a particular consumer's journey occurred, given the data that's available. And that data, this goes to the sort of data-centric AI notion, needs to be arranged in the rawest form that I can provide it, so it can extract the most information versus a more structured data analysis. That's another part of the big idea, that if I just structure the data the way I always do for the set of sort of fundamental prediction technologies that I use, I'll never be able to get at the information that's in there that I never considered was in there, because I always use the same predictive approaches. I could speak a lot more about that, but that's an important aspect.
Where does the corpus of data come in then? Is it based on some of these agencies? They use their own corpus of data? You guys share data? Is it a new form of data you're providing at Plus? I mean, how does that play out?
Well, the data inputs are coming from brand advertisers themselves, their knowledge about what they sell, where they sell it, when they sold it, communications they do themselves, emails, what they're doing on their own website properties. They come from the various media platforms and ad tech platforms in some form. It might be at a very granular level. It might be at a much more aggregate level. If you get information from radio or print, you only have a general sense for overall impressions, but that's still useful in building the journey. So it comes in from all different sort of places. That's one of the biggest challenges that you have to overcome from an engineering perspective to build a product like this is how do you quickly integrate data of different types and then normalize it against a standard taxonomy that allows the data to be different, right? Rather than put it in a relational database where everything's nice and structured and easy to analyze, but you'll never get as much information out of it as it really holds.
I presume everything we're talking about in terms of really getting value is going to be around unstructured data. I mean, structured data is a given, but the unstructured data is where it all comes in. And I guess what I'm hearing from you is then the brand would come to you and say, look, I need you to help me with my marketing, my client touch points, et cetera. And then you would say, all right, what data do you have that you want us to look at? Where is it coming from? Is it structured? Is it unstructured? You'd put that together. Then you'd outline the framework. And then you'd use AIOS?
Well,
On top
AIOS
of
does
that?
all of that in a very general way. We productized all of that, where I can take in a wide array of data, various forms, and then do this very general idea, which is put it through the customer journey recovery system that
So
will
AIOS
help
is
them.
all you need then. I mean, you just take this and then do you offer services or something to plug in all the different entry points, like the data, the corpuses of data, or is it pretty well self-explanatory that a client could do this by themselves? Pretty much.
It's somewhere in between that, between self-explanatory and having software that you can go to do the implementation yourself. So you could do that, but you need to know enough about how to implement. As the product exists today, it's always a pillar of our roadmap to make implementation easy for anybody to do. But it does amount to just connecting, pointing AIOS towards the set of APIs that you have available for a scope that you want to measure and do prediction and optimization on, and then you let it go until you get to the point of, well, I have I've taken the data, I've organized it, I've used that data to train algorithms that are very specific to my business and my consumers' journeys, and now I want to use those artifacts to actually make business decisions. So then I'll take that information, I'll put it into a decision support system that helps me build scenarios. Here's the time, the place, the budget, and then it gives back a plan. Here's what you should do. And now you need to activate it, right? So where we are today, that activation is happening in the typical platforms where you're buying media communication, or you're able to carry it out in your own call centers, on your websites, all of that stuff. So it has to be broadcast back out to those places. As we go, we'll be able to do that in a more consolidated way, such that activation can be done directly from the software to close the loop fully.
Well, let me take one step back because I got a follow-on question for you. I noticed when I was doing the introduction, particularly if you look at your LinkedIn, you'll see customer-centric privacy protecting marketing AI. The key word in there that I wanted to jump in on, privacy. With everything you're talking about and the challenges we have today, it's navigating privacy regulations. I got to believe that's a significant challenge. How are you tackling that challenge?
So remember, what we're trying to do is create a representative picture of the marketplace for the marketer. The marketer doesn't care exactly who you are, like which address you are and what your DNA is. They are interested in delivering a message about something valuable that they have to you that you can choose to buy or not. And you can do that without having personally identifiable information. Prediction helps you abstract more from that, right? Such that the customer you have is fully representative, or all the customers in the marketplace, let's say the full population of the US, is what the software is reporting on. But any one customer would be a tokenized notion of that with some sort of predicted rendering of the consumer journey, which is representative but not exact. But it's that sort of thing that abstracts to a level that is more privacy preserving, and it also generates a more user acceptable picture to the marketer. These deterministic sort of solutions that you try to use personally identifying information, they're full of holes, right? Because of privacy regulation and walled garden and all this sort of stuff. So you can't possibly get a business representative picture of customer journeys unless you have this sort of solution. So those are two important points about how prediction can solve the privacy problem. Now, of course, prediction can become so good that without personally identifying information, you could still identify stuff about an individual. Like as a corner case, imagine if there's only one person that lived in a massive geographic area, say in the north of Canada or something like. So, you could say, well, I can identify that person and what they're doing, even though you abstracted from it. But you have to put those sort of protections in place, like that, maybe I should only be able to analyze geographic areas that contain 50 or 100 people. Those protections in the limit are important because, the predictive technology is that good.
All right, switching gears on you a bit then. Look, when I was reviewing your website, you have a lot of algorithms, GitHub repositories. Look, by the way, you talk about being a marketer, you seem like you're pretty technical to me. So how do the algorithms that you've created out here play into all this?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I figured I needed to learn the technical stuff if I was to do the business stuff well. So I spent a lot of time doing that, but always doing that with some sort of very practical goal in mind, like marketing management. When it comes to algorithms, there's a couple of things, a very general term, right? Sometimes we use it to mean the underlying, predictive math that we're using to predict a phenomena, like where we think data comes from, customers moving through the marketplace. It's the computer science that we need to actually train those models and then, utilize them in some way, provide some intelligence off of that learning. And that's really what, if you go to my website, the sort of algorithms that you'd see there, and I haven't probably written much code, certainly not production code, in a decade now or so, that, I have a very specific data generating phenomena that I want to provide some machinery to recover from some data that's available. Let me write that down and then figure out how to actually train that at scale, given the computational resources that were available at that time. So, when I started developing these algorithms as an academic, my ability to actually demonstrate that they work and how they work is limited by the sort of computation that was available. And at that time, cloud computing and distributed computing became more available. That allowed me to write algorithms that could exploit the benefits of this sort of parallelized distributed computing in a way that I could train models that people couldn't train before, because they'd take decades and decades to train. Those models at that time would take 6 months to train. Now they take 2 minutes, right? And that's really like the driving force behind all of this, is that the price and the time of prediction just keeps on dropping.
Good answer. So look, if you were to package all this and summarize like your 2-minute pitch on, if you were to summarize your 2-minute pitch on Plus Company, what would it be? For those listeners out there, they've heard everything to this point. And by the way, you're welcome to elaborate on anything we might have missed.
So first, I'll give this from the biased perspective of somebody who's interested in radical AI-driven sort of transformation. That means that as we talked a little bit about system-level change earlier, and as I look at the world of agency, of marketing agency, we have to recognize that the things that we have people doing today, the price that we can command for those things must be dropping if we're making people more efficient with AI, right? So any business that's built on a time and materials sort of model, either it has to really, really improve the value of the time and materials to charge more for them. But the trend has been for the price of those time and materials to keep coming down and for agencies to become more and more efficient. But it's time to sort of turn that model on its head, where, a system level change might allow us to build business models that can better help us capture the value of what we do, or how we organize around AI or other data-driven technologies to provide better services and outputs for advertisers and marketers and others looking to communicate with the marketplace. So that's what we're trying to do at Plus Company is have the sort of from my perspective, the intelligence-driven strategy that allows us to come out with a differentiated product, right? And AIOS is an example of that. If you think about taking AIOS and making it part of some of these other technologies that people use, like image generation or language generation, and part of that prompt is information about the marketplace, it's going to make way more performant outputs, right? Like if those things make advertisements, those advertisements will be based on how people actually act. And it's that sort of tech strategy that I'm after, but it's also, more importantly, this sort of human-centric AI strategy that I'm after at Plus Company, which is having people that begin to organize differently around the technologies in ways that are more valuable for customers, and in ways that, as a business leader, I can share that value with our clients and our customers, such that we can have a successful business model rather than go the way of the dinosaur and the way that I expect time and materials related businesses. People doing the same old stuff better with point solutions just ain't going to cut it.
What does Plus do that no one else can do?
There's two things. We can move fast to do innovative things, like the fact that Plusco hires somebody like me who doesn't come from agency testifies to that they're going to hire a product tech person, which is fundamentally a different business model and culture, right, than an agency. How the hell do you fit that in? Well, you make the company inviting for diversity and different and entrepreneurship. The other thing that's going on is that we do have a scale such that we can make investments that matter. So if you're small and you're really nimble, sometimes it's really hard to get the investment unless you have a bunch of VC backers and high risk sort of decisions, or you're a big holding company that can't get out of your way to do anything. We're that right size. So if you look at our size and this model of having a diverse network of entrepreneurs, and that you have a leadership that would bring in a crazy looking character like myself, relative to agency sort of leaders, and actually, release a real product in the market and start to transform our own business model in a way that's more value driven. I think all of those things are very different before you get to AIOS and say, hey, they have a unique technology that today nobody has, and they're getting a head start. They have marketers that are using this sort of technology, and there's a product roadmap that is going to continue to integrate these sort of predictive technologies and the value that they provide in ever growing ways. So,
anything else you'd like to bring up that we didn't cover today?
I'm sure there's lots. The thing that I fear the most is people getting in the way, and that doesn't mean not being careful about adopting new technologies and understanding them. We've seen a lot of that this past weekend with discussion about change in leadership at OpenAI,
right,
and generalized, general AI that's smarter than humans. That's a real thing. We're heading in that direction, so we need to be careful. Where we don't need to, we can be careful enough is using the sort of very pointed types of AI that we have available to us today, figure out how to organize around those and build policy and protection around those things, and really reap the benefits of that, rather than people saying all AI bad, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thinking. That for somebody who's always trying to transform stands in my way the most. So I think there are legitimate philosophical concerns about generalized AI and more powerful AI. But we can't let that stand in the way of the sort of societal benefits that we could realize as we carefully and responsibly develop prediction to do things in different ways that we couldn't imagine doing last month.
Crazy. I don't know when this podcast will air. It'll probably be a few weeks, but yeah, this last weekend, Sam Altman out as OpenAI CEO, but I have the feeling he's going to be back in here before too long. This is like chaos. Well, thank you. I'm very appreciative of all the comments that you've made. I do have a couple more questions, but before I move on, where can folks reach you? I want to make sure I get that out there.
You mentioned my website. That's www.macohen.net. And then from there, you can find me on LinkedIn links and GitHub links and all these sort of things. Email. That's probably the best channel through which to ultimately reach me.
And then pluscompany.com, PLUS,
Correct.
right?
And then there's a AIOS. You should be able to find the AIOS website there, and Plus Intelligence as well within.
Fantastic. Hey, so yeah, a couple more questions. Just kind of, they're more personal, but still technical or related to your day job. One thing you said on LinkedIn that sparked my interest was aggressive innovation roadmaps. What do you mean by those?
Yeah, I've two things, like always try to do the right thing, right? Which starts with asking the question, well, what if this could be done differently, or do we really need to do that? And I guess I'll give a concrete example, related to what I've talked about already, which is, business models that are related to time and materials, sort of billing of clients and customers, rely on things like timesheets, right? So you can either think about a solution for making the filling out and the reporting on timesheets more efficient with AI or automation, or you could, allow a business that is time and materials to evolve into a business that's more as a service license and value-based pricing sort of model. And then you don't have timesheets for the purpose of revenue accounting reasons. So, I'm always trying to make that leap of like, well, why are we doing this way? Let's just actually solve the problem that has driven us to do it this way to begin with. I think the big idea behind AIOS is like this, which is, why do I have to keep using the sort of same structured data analyses that everybody else is using, pulling data from the same structured relational databases? Let me think about what it is I want to do, or what the data is that I want as a marketer, and then reverse engineer the system. Like, if I could train the model that I wanted, what would it look like? Let me write that down. Okay, now I have the model. Well, if I could do that, well, how should I arrange the data to do that? And can I use data that isn't, customer level data to tell me something about customers? And just keep pushing that envelope to be able to do something really different, to get at what it is we ultimately want, rather than try to engineer our way in a much more confined world or game. Change the game.
Hey, what's your biggest concern about the new ChatGPT or data augmentation world that we live in today? Do you have a concern?
Well, I guess it starts with humans, right? Humans doing bad or nefarious sort of things is always a concern. But humans not doing the right thing. The thing that always scares me on a daily basis is sloth and inaction, and the inaction is an action. So, whether you're not leaning into AI and figuring out how to use it and figuring out how to make it better and protect people and businesses around it, then, you're sitting around and probably letting the criminals get better with it and its understanding. And then you're also not helping your business if you're a business leader, or your society if you're a local government leader. It's happening. Lean into it. So I'd say inaction is the thing that scares me the most.
That and fake news for me, but I got it. Hey, anything that you see on the horizon, speaking of prediction of in marketing, that you think is going to be the next disruptive thing that maybe folks like myself that aren't marketers haven't even thought of?
Yeah, I think I'll step back a little from marketing, and I'll just, as a business sort of application, like I think there's going to be some smart entrepreneurs, like product and tech entrepreneurs, that continue to develop AI technologies that can help make your average or low performing employees and perform as well as your highest performing employees. Mm-hmm. And boy, would, if you ask any manager, if you could do that, holy cow, that would be transformative. And we already see lots of evidence of that, right? I told the story earlier about black cabs and making your average driver a London cab driver in the morning, sort of thing, with the technology. That's really where I think, especially managers, should be looking. Like, how do I use AI to make everybody as strong as my strongest employees in various ways? There's been some research, with ChatGPT in particular, and Boston Consulting Group, some researchers at a Harvard Business School, gave a bunch of analysts or people working there the ChatGPT technology to do their job, and then had a control group, and then saw that the productivity and quality was substantially larger for that with the technology. So, there's more evidence, and then I think there'll be more product that makes that sort of value proposition present pretty quickly. When I say this year, I mean 24.
Look, final question. This should be the easiest one for today. When you're not doing algorithms, when you're not doing marketing, what do you do for fun?
I'm a fly fisherman. I'm a wine collector. First and foremost, I'm a husband and a parent of 2 young boys, which I think as they're in school, how does this all affect, what they should be focusing on to live their own rewarding sort of life. Certainly is different than the sort of math and English education that I went through and you went through as a kid. So I'm trying to think proactively about that stuff too.
Where do you fly fish?
So I'm in New York. One of the best places in the Northeast is the Upper Delaware system, where it comes together from East and West Branch. And if you like fly fishing for brown trout on the surface with small terminal tackle, then
so you're using dry
all dry flies, mayflies and caddis, and typical sort of hatch that happens up there through the year. But it's I don't want to say it's too great of a fishery, but it's a great fishery. I just don't want to see other fishermen on the river at this point.
I get it, man, because I went this weekend, actually. That's why I ask. My father, we went to Southern Missouri. I live in Kansas City, and there's a place down there. They're off season right now, but it turned out to be, so you can't keep anything or anything else like that. But there was hardly anybody there. It was fantastic. Although I didn't catch anything on dry flies. We started with dry fly, but we did okay. It's fun stuff. It's I get a lot of audiobooks in while I'm fishing and relaxing. I don't know if you do the same, but
just being in nature is helpful to my brain's reconstruction and rest.
I get it. You got to get out of here sometimes. Thank you, Michael Cohen, very, very much for being here today. I appreciate all your insight.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate the opportunity.
And folks listening, thank you. As always, hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. We will listen and get the content on that you'd like to hear about. Until next time, we'll see you on the podcast. See you later. Bye-bye.